So just really quick, once again, my name's Jesse Martinez with Matsui International. Yesterday we had a fun day, right? You guys seen a vendor running around like crazy trying to print that's never printed before? So that was cool. Zach was kind enough to give me a 12-color job to print yesterday, so thank you, Zach. So, you know, I did some thinking overnight, and you know, I want to kind of go over discharge really quick, since we've seen it printing yesterday, and both discharge as an underbase for plastisol, and then discharge directly to fabric. Okay, I did get a feeling that some of you guys got really scared and started running out the door because you seen me running around like crazy. That was my fault. You know, and again, it's the experience. You know, I don't have that experience of running, setting up a machine, and I can't be everywhere. Okay, we had 3 jobs going on at the same time. They're calling me to fix something over here. I'm trying to work on this one, and luckily I had Ian helping me over here on the other machine. So today I'm going to do something a little bit different. We are going to print a puff with some colors on top on one machine. We are going to print a white shirt with some colors. And these are going to be some hybrid systems, acrylic, polyurethane blends. The reason for that, because that's where we're going, that's where we're headed, that's the future. So I want to show you guys how those work. I also did use additives today because it's dry. So that'll help us maintain the ink from drying too quickly in the screens, because we are dealing with some higher solids as well. Okay. The other thing is we're going to work on one machine at a time. Okay. And we're going to go through one color at a time, get everything adjusted. Okay. Simulate like we're registering the job, and then we'll set it to print. Once we get the white t-shirt running and printing, okay, get that printing, we'll move over to the next machine and do the exact same thing. Okay, we got plenty of time to do that. Like that, it doesn't feel so hectic. And then you get to see, you know, the step-by-step on how we, you know, set up a machine for water-based printing. And then we're gonna pre-print some foil adhesive. I don't think everybody got a good impression or a good feel for the foil. So we're gonna print a few shirts in advance. And we're redoing that, and then we're gonna take it over to the heat press in the back over here, and then transfer it over to show you the exact steps for foil. Okay? Yeah. And the cold peel is always going to give you better wash fastness as well too. Okay? So we're going to go through that, and then we're going to finish it off with printing a gold metallic water base. Okay? But we're going to go ahead and start with discharge. Okay? So some of the things that we ran into yesterday, obviously, didn't set it up the way we're going to do it today. The steps are getting it registered, make sure the flood bars are set up properly, the squeegees, and all the colors are printing correctly. Okay? We just turned it on, and I was just going around and adjusting. I had some of you put some ink in there that never done it before. Okay, if you recall, some of the screens had good amount of ink, some had too little of ink. Okay, these are the things I wanted to happen so you can see what's going to happen and how to fix it or why it's happening. Okay, and I think then you see me going around putting more ink in the screens, adjusting the flood bars, and then when I did all that, come to realize there was a couple of colors that were not pushing the ink through correctly. So then I had to put a little bit more pressure, you know. Finally, we got it running correctly, right? And that's a lot of colors to do in this type of environment. So in the future, we're gonna consider that, you know, so we're not working with so many colors.
No way. Go big or go home.
He told me it's gonna be a disaster. I'm like, but we can learn from it.
Exactly, yes. I don't consider it a disaster, and I did hear a lot of good comments that a lot of you did learn from seeing me running around there and doing what I was doing. And again, there's not that many 18 color presses out there, so realistically, you know, you got to design for your customers or know what you can do with what you have. Okay, Maybe next time I'll do a 4-color process and we start from there. You know, that's a little bit easier, 4 screens, maybe a couple of spot colors, something like that. But know your limits, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. Know what you can do, and know if you want to push the limits, that's cool, but know it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, and you've got to make sure to be prepared for that. So keep it simple. So again, just want to reiterate, you know, you might hear some things that I already said yesterday, but just want to reiterate it for those of you that it might help that didn't pick up on it. Discharge is not an ink. It's a re-dyeing process, or it's a dye process, okay? It's a chemical reaction that goes into the fabric, 100% cotton, removes the dye. Recommended dye is a reactive dye. So there's a few different ways of dyeing fabrics. The reactive dye is what is needed for the discharge to be able to work properly, okay? Always keeping in mind that you could run into the possibilities of fabrics that are re-dyed, and those are not compatible with discharge, okay? So you're removing the dye from the fabric, leaving the natural color of the fabric, which normally is an off-white, okay? And that's what we did on the first machine when we were doing a discharge under base with plastisol on top. We also have the option of adding a little bit of discharge white to the base to brighten it up, okay? So I did get a lot of questions about that, is can I add white or can I use a discharge white? Because I want to see the colors more vibrant, right? You can, but I would say no more than 40% discharge white. And I just want to repeat again, 100% discharge white is not recommended for underbase. Okay, just a little bit of white into the base, because it will fall out at the wash. And as far as colors are concerned, on the second machine, we did discharge direct to a black fabric with no underbase. Everybody did recognize that, right? There was no underbase, it was just colors directly to the fabric. So there, what we're doing is a re-dye process. Simultaneously, we're removing the dye and replacing it with a pigment onto the fabric, okay? And discharge, remember, will not have any elasticity to it. So you can't stretch it and say, oh, it's not stretching. That's not discharge. Discharge is part of the fabric. So the fabric separates, the ink is going to separate because it's on the fabric. Are we all clear with that? So nobody's going to call me and say, hey, discharge is cracking. Discharge don't crack, okay? Because it's not an ink, it's a dye. So we have, there's a couple of, in the Matsui line, there's a couple of different discharge series that we offer, options of bases, sorry. Discharge bases. So we have a discharge base, which is a clear, which we use on the first machine. Discharge matte just has a little bit more opacity to it, so the colors will sit on top a little bit better, and it'll have better wash fastness. That one is called Discharge 301 DM. DM standing for Discharge Matte. Okay. In the States, we do have a ready-for-use product called the Alpha Series, which is ready-for-use colors that we blend using the formulas in your Pantone book. Unfortunately, Pantone, this year, if anybody has a new Pantone book, Pantone decided to change their formulas on the Pantone book the way they should be. They actually now included a clear base, an opaque base, and then the colors underneath that. So that's going to kind of mess up our idea with, you know, blending colors together to make color. So we got to figure out how to adapt to Pantone. And like you guys heard me yesterday, I'm not a big fan of Pantone. So that's why bases and pigments make the most sense right now for us. And then we have a discharge white. So there's two discharge whites, and same thing with the base. You have a high mesh series, and then you have the bright series. Okay, the high mesh series is exactly that. It's for underbasing. It's not going to have good opacity or vibrant colors. It's designed more for the fashion side of the business. Vintage, if you want to simulate a vintage look on a t-shirt, that one's great for that. That's the high mesh. The bright is going to be when you want some really bright colors. You know, and what we did over here, printing wet on wet, bright colors, they're really going to pop. It's going to sit a little bit more on top. The matte base will also have nice bright colors and sit on top with better wash fastness. In discharge, we don't sell Plasticharge, but I added on here because if you hear it, you know what it is. It does involve discharge. It's a 50-50 blend of Plastisol with discharge mixed together, and then you activate it. It's going to have more of a hand than a traditional discharge. But what a lot of printers like about that is that it has the word Plastisol in it. That means I can leave it in the screen. It's not going to dry. The drawback to it could be hand feel. You will have more hand feel. Again, water and oil don't mix, so there might be some issues there as well that you can run into. And there's only certain companies that make a good Plasticharge that somewhat works. But you do get some good vibrant colors on there. But my thing has been, and the reason we don't make a product for you to use with Plastisol is that if you're going to do Plasticharge, you might as well do discharge. Simple as that. It just doesn't make sense. There is also products out there that they called non-formaldehyde. So one thing I didn't mention yesterday is the agent, the mixing agent they use in the discharge has formaldehyde in it. So you have to be very careful when you use it, how you use it. You want a ventilated environment, good airflow. You don't want to be locked up doing discharge, breathing that. There's a little bit of formaldehyde in the agent, not good. So there's a lot of brands that require us to offer a non-formaldehyde discharge, but we decided not to do that either because the agent for the non-formaldehyde is combustible, okay? Combustible is not fun. You got to keep that powder locked up in a metal container and keep it away from heat while we use flashes, right? And if you leave the flash on there too long, it will catch on fire. So, yeah. I'm trying not to sell it. But there's people that use it because the brands are requiring that. So you just got to be very careful in the handling of that, okay? The discharge activator, the common one that all of us use, is called ZFS. ZFS pretty much is the same for everybody. So if you run out of Matsui discharge agent and you happen to have another one in there, just make sure it's not too old and it hasn't absorbed the moisture. And the reason you know that, the reason you can tell if it has too much moisture, it'll start crystallizing, turning into like little crystal chunks, okay? Always keep it sealed. If you buy a gallon of the ZFS, divide it up into quarts and only use that quart, open and close that quart. Don't keep opening the gallon, closing it, or leaving it open, because it will absorb moisture. And it will crystallize and it'll go bad, or make it very difficult to blend. And if those crystals don't mix well, it'll cause problems when you're printing, streaks, might even rip your mesh, okay, because they're sharp. And then this is the name of the non-formaldehyde agent, okay, so stay away from that. I don't like it. Again, just really quick, we went over this yesterday, but works best with 100% cotton. Can work with some compatible fabrics, you know, the 60/40s, predominantly the heathers that have the polyester that's white is where it works the best. Ultra soft tan, can be used as an underbase. Vintage fashion designs, fine detail, halftones, that would be our high mesh discharge for that. Something we didn't talk about that discharge works very well for is all over printing. Have any of you guys done all over printing? Or simulated all over printing? Simulated? Yeah, so people will do like a one color on a flat board, and they use discharge because discharge will go over seams very well. Since it's going into the fabric, You know, you want an ink that will absorb into every part of that fabric to get that design to go all the way through.
This might be a question. What exactly is 100% discharge ready on?
So that's the 100% cotton shirt that we were talking about earlier. That is reactive dye. It has reactive dye. So that's a discharge ready shirt. Okay. Another area where discharge is very useful or helpful is when you're printing foil, a multicolor with a foil application. Foil will not stick to discharge. Okay, there's not enough resin in the foil. So anybody who's done multicolor designs with a foil on it, they need to use an ink that the foil does not stick to. Does that make sense? So discharge is the solution for that, because foil will stick to anything that has resin, including plastisol. So you cannot print a white plastisol and then a foil next to it or in the design, because the foil will stick to the plastisol unless it's separate from where the white is at. Okay, so if you need to do that, you want to use a discharge white and then the foil next to it, and the foil will not stick to the discharge white. Okay, just throwing that out there in case you want to do it multicolor. So here's an example of some discharge. This one actually has foil up here, and the rest of it's all discharge. That's amazing detail right there. And that is a real shirt, and that was a production shirt there. Yeah, so for the white discharge, you know, again, we recommend that as a kind of straight, ready for use white. You can get away with using one screen, double stroke will give you a nice bright white. If you use a high mesh discharge white, it's going to give you a vintage look. It's not going to be an opaque white, it's going to be a bone color white. So like an off-white. So if you're looking for an off-white, the HM discharge white is actually a really good option. The white that is bright is our bright discharge white. That's going to be our opaque white, nice and bright. Can work with some blends. Again, water-based solutions. Everything else is pretty much very similar to the base. Okay, so here's some examples of how we would use the white, and then here's an example of how white discharge is used on an all-over print. So there's boards that you can buy that you can put the whole shirt on there, and then bigger screens, put it on there. Does that make sense? So some people just get boards, you know, and they'll lay it on a board, get a big screen, two people holding the board, the other one printing it, that's it. Okay, because you can get away with discharge, you can get away with using one screen, you're able to accomplish something like this, you know, on a manual or a big table manual. Keith went over a lot of this stuff here as far as emulsions, thin threads, squeegee durometers, you know, 60 to 80. Curing time, 320 to 3 minutes. Only make what you're going to use, very important. Okay, we talked about that. You know, if you know you're going to use about a gallon, only activate a quart at a time so it doesn't go to waste. Activator. So these discharge inks need to be activated. You can activate using anywhere from 4 to 8% activator. We say 10% is the max, but I wouldn't go up to 10. The low number, the 4%, will be more for when you're using discharge as an underbase, because the activator tends to want to attack the pigment either in plastisol or discharge or water base. Okay? So the minimal amount of activator you put in the discharge will help reduce that chemical reaction of trying to weaken the vibrancy of the pigment, okay? But that has a lot to do with the fabric. The reason for the different percentages, if the fabric is very aggressive, it might take a little bit more of the activating agent to remove that dye out, okay? So.
How do you know if your fabric's not responding to discharge?
Okay, so the question is, how do you know if the fabric is not responding to the discharge? Okay, the color of a shirt before it's dyed is natural. It's like an off-white. There's a bright off-white, and sometimes there's like a little bit darker off-white. So when you use a clear discharge base on that garment, you should be able to see a nice bright off-white image. Okay, if it's not working, what you're going to see is you'll see the off-white, but then it gets dark again, and it might turn blue, it might turn pink, it might turn red. There's a lot of variations there, and that's a re-dye. Okay, the other one is just it stays black. You know, it's just going to get like a lighter black, so it's not reacting to that either. So that happened to us, I think, when we first tested on some other fabrics. If you're trying to make a bright red, and it's not bright, it's not reacting to the dye, or you need to add a little bit more activator. Okay? The problem I have with red is that red pigments are weak, doesn't matter what ink system. So the combination of heat, discharge agent, you know, is bad for red colors. Blue and yellows could be, yeah, some of them can be affected as well. The fixers or the additives that are most important for discharge is going to be the retarder. I normally recommend 2% of retarder and 5% of the softener because we want that penetrant. You know, we want that to penetrate into the fabric, absorb into the fabric. Okay? Those are really the only two additives I recommend, plus the agent, the activating agent. All right, before we go into the acrylics and polyurethanes, I'll take quick questions on the discharge, also on what you've seen yesterday, if you have any questions about yesterday's prints. I want to take some questions on that. We got about, we'll do about 5 minutes of that. Sorry. Yes, so the additives for discharge is 2% of the retarder Mg, 5% of the softener Mg, which is our penetrant. And then the activator is 4 to 8%, depending on how aggressive that dye is on that fabric. Okay? So the more activator, the more it'll go in there and remove that dye, if that makes sense. Okay? But if you can get away with less activator, that's better. Yes, sir.
Is there a list of recommended blanks for discharge?
That's a good question. Is there a list for recommended blanks or manufacturers that have a discharge compatible product? We don't have it. There is a couple of brands that have it online. The gentleman that's here with 7 Lane, you can ask him also. So I would either talk to your garment distributor or find out from the manufacturer's website to see if they have something. There is a couple of brands. I think Gildan out there has one that you can look up, and it'll tell you which models or which series of 100% cotton are discharge ready. Water-based, yes. Discharge, no. Okay? Discharge needs that heat to evaporate that water as fast as possible, and also to get that agent to react. If you just let it sit there, it might discharge a little bit, but not fully. Okay? But you could use a heat press to discharge the ink. Okay? So there's going to be some small shops that say, I don't have the correct dryer for water-based, so you could use a heat press. Very similar to what you see here with the Stampinator, you know, something like that. or just a heat press. I've done discharge with the heat press before as well, okay? 330, 340 for about, you're probably looking at about 2-3 minutes as well. Yeah. Maybe less. You gotta do your testing, you know, because it's more contact, but we gotta evaporate that moisture out. You know, my only concern with heat presses is that it traps the moisture in there. So it takes a little bit longer to get that moisture out of there. Okay? Some people use flashes. They'll let it sit in their flash. You know, you got to do what you got to do to grow into the dryer, right? Uh-huh. No, when it's evaporating, you know, in the air and you're breathing it, yeah, that's what, if you don't have good ventilation, is bad. It's such a minimal amount of formaldehyde. I mean, it'll take like 70 years to really affect you if you're in an enclosed environment, but it's just, you got to be safe. Any chemicals, glasses, goggles, gloves, you know, it's important for manufacturers to enforce, you know, or reinforce the importance of your environment, your working environment. So you want to have good ventilation. Also with discharge, you don't want to use it on kid products, you know, like baby, juniors. You want to use from juniors and above. Anybody younger than juniors, you don't want to use discharge, especially if you're not going to dry clean it or wash it. If you dry clean it or wash it afterwards, it's okay, because it'll wash the little bit of formaldehyde that's in there. But especially with infants, they get their shirts and they put it in their mouth, you know, so if they don't wash that garment, you don't know they're not going to wash that garment. It's better not to use it. So a lot of the brands actually restrict us from using discharge on anything, on any youth or infant size garments. So just something to keep in mind, okay? Or put a big sticker on there, wash before use. Any other questions? Ready to move on? All right. So right now we're going to focus right here on this area, the low solids, medium solids, high solids. If you've never done water-based before, and you're going to attempt to do water-based, obviously, like I said yesterday, discharge is a good introduction to water-based. Underbasing plastisol with discharge is a good introduction. But sometimes you just want to put on a white or light color shirt, and you want to make sure you have good wash fastness and make it easy for you to work with. I would say you start here with the low solids. Okay, the low solids are designed for soft hand, high mesh printing capabilities. Let's see. "100% cotton, natural fabrics." You could do some blends. It is going to be a little bit more transparent, but work your way up to, you know, darker shirts. The white ink in the low solids is an awesome product. You know, it's very easy to work with, especially if you add the additives. One thing I didn't mention to you yesterday about the additives, we have all these individual additives, right? We have the retarder, we have the fixers, we have the softeners. We also offer a product called Quick Additive. Quick Additive is all in one. We've put the retarder, we put the fixer, and we put the softener all in one, okay? And we added one other additive, which is a thickener. Remember yesterday we talked about when you're adding pigments, the viscosity is going to drop? Well, that thickener in the low solid acrylics is very important because it comes low viscosity already as it is. So that's going to help stabilize the viscosity of that product. So low solid acrylics with a quick additive to back you up is a really good way to start printing water-based for the first time. Or it's designed for soft hand. So if you want something to be the softest hand possible using water-based and discharge is not something you want to work with, your next option is the low solid acrylics. In the Matsui line, it would be very simple, just 301. Clear 301, matte 301, white 301, okay? So 301 is just our series for acrylic. And it's really designed for automatics as well, okay? So all our inks were designed for automatic printing, so not just table printing. Because there is water-based inks designed for table printing that they use out in Asia. Those dry really fast. Like they don't even use flashes. They're really good products, but you gotta know how to work them. So low solid acrylics for just keeping it simple. The low solid acrylics, like I mentioned yesterday, can also be used with your high solid acrylics to improve the performance of your high solid, like an additive. So it's not a bad idea. If you're working with like an easy print or a medium solid or a stretch series, you can use the low solids to improve its performance, printability, open time on the screen. And I would do that before I start adding additives. That's something that I like to do personally. When I'm working in a shop, I teach them how to use the low solid as an additive to improve the high solids, okay? And working environments. I work a lot down in Central America where it gets really hot. Honduras is really hot. El Salvador is really hot. So before I start adding additives and messing with the viscosity of the ink, I try to use the low solids. So high solids, okay, types of fabrics. You see that polyester starts getting mentioned a little bit more in the high solids. Again, this was forced upon us by the brands that needed to go PVC free. So when you hear high solids, that immediately is going to tell you that it's going to be a water-based ink that has great performance, great elasticity, great opacity, basically everything you have right now with Plastisol, but a little bit better on the elasticity. But since it's water-based, it is going to dry faster. So you have to be very conscious when working with these high solids that it will dry faster. So additives are going to be key in this product. The low solid into the high solid is also going to help improve this. But it will give you that opacity, you know, that stretch, everything that you're looking for in an ink or that you're getting right now with Plastisol. So this is, I guess, the best way to put it, the closest you're going to get to Plastisol with a better hand, improved hand. And if you see here with the mesh count, 110 to 200. Can you go higher? Yes, you can. We've pushed 230, okay? I wouldn't recommend anything more than 230. But when I start doing the 230, guess what I do? I add some of the low solid in there. 10%, 20%, that's where I start. And that will kind of guarantee me not to have any issues with the higher mesh count. One thing about the low solid acrylic that is really nice, especially when you're printing direct onto a fabric, it does allow you to print wet on wet. So if you have some limitations of how big your press is, the low solids is a really, really good solution for printing wet on wet. So you can go 2 to 4 colors, wet on wet, flash or dry, and then do another 2 to 4 colors, wet on wet, okay? If you don't have that space and you need to print more colors wet on wet, just make sure the colors are not touching and they're just side by side, okay? And you can do wet on wet because it's gonna be absorbing into the fabric, so that makes it a little bit easier to print wet on wet. The softener, the additive softener, that also helps to keep it from sticking in the screens. And yesterday I'd mentioned using the softener to wipe the screens to keep it less tacky or to act like a silicone for the water-based inks. And in the high solids, we do have the dye migration blocker available. So we'll talk about that a little bit more on the special effects. Medium solid acrylics, don't really have to go too much into this because basically we're just combining the low solids and the high solids 50-50. In the Matsui line, the high solid is going to be the stretch series. Anything that says stretch on it, basically. Soft stretch, stretch series, and now we have the Pro series, which is our production series, that's going to be more polyurethane. Okay, those are all high solids. In the medium solids, we have what we call the easy print, the one you guys all got excited and put their notes down and be like, that's it. That's the one I want, the easy print. Okay, that's the already pre-mixed for you, 50-50, low solids, high solids. It's going to give you the best of both worlds. It's a good starting point as well. So low solids is the high, I recommend that for entry level, but if you want to go past entry level and say, you know what, I need the best of both worlds, your next step would be the medium solid acrylics. And that for Matsui is going to be the easy print series. And that one will also allow you to go higher mesh counts, okay? Because you have the best of both there. This is an older, we do have a color card, we have a digital one. You can always request it. I'm gonna send Zach a few. We're having some made right now. I'll send Zach some. You can always check in with them in about a few weeks or a month. And if you wanna get one of the Matsui color cards, we will send it to you. And it does have everything separated here from acrylic, hybrid, high solids, or it's gonna be low solids, medium solids, high solids, okay? And it'll show you which products are which. So that makes it a bit easier. We also put the mesh counts in there that it's compatible with, just to remind you that try not to go outside of that range. In our color chart, you're also gonna find all our special effects. We have flock adhesive foaming additive, or that's gonna be our puff additive. Foil adhesive, foil blocker, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Going into the special effects. Glitter base, gold shimmer, silver shimmer. We used to have high density. High density is a tough one in water base, you know, because we're supposed to be soft. So you got to use a lot of screens and really stack that. So there was a print down there, like kind of fluorescent orange one. That was our high density, but we used like 4 screens with 200 micron stencils, you know. So it's not very production friendly, is what I'm trying to say. And then our under base blockers and the self-cracking. We also have reflective flakes. So if you want to do a reflective, we have a silver reflective and a clear reflective bead that we mix into our glitter base, okay? Designed more for fashion, not safety, okay? Don't sell it as a safety product. It's not a safety reflective. It's more for fashion, hidden messages. When somebody takes a photo with a flash, that reflective will appear. That's how they're using the reflective, you know, for little hidden messages, just some ideas on how you can use it. And then the auxiliaries, or the additives there. And through that, cool. So, any questions on the acrylics or polyurethanes before I jump into the special effects? You have to add it. Yes, it's a separate product. No. And the other thing is, we didn't talk about shelf life and pot life, okay? So discharge, very important for all of you to hear this, because if not, you're gonna call Zach and be like, hey, this stuff is not working, and then I'm gonna hear it. Discharge inks have a 6-month shelf life. Out here in Canada, it might get extended a little bit more, maybe 8 months to a year, because it's cold, okay? Discharge likes to be in cold environments to extend the life of it, okay? This is without activating it. So only purchase what you think you're gonna use within a 6-month period. Preferably a 3 to 4 month, because it probably takes a month to get here, right? So I would say try to estimate what you're gonna use within 3 to 4 months. We do have a quality control guide that you can read the lot numbers to know how old your discharge is. How do you know if your discharge is going bad? The base will turn really runny, really watery. Okay, it's just gonna go all the way down to viscosity. It's gonna be like water. That's when you know it's starting to go bad. The white does the opposite. It goes up in viscosity. When you activate it, it'll go up in viscosity. It'll look like cottage cheese, okay? So if you're getting those two reactions, you might want to check that lot number. Have that lot number checked to see how old it is. So only purchase what you think you're going to use within a 3 to 4 month period. Zach has anticipated he no longer is bringing in discharge in 5-gallon pails. He's bringing them in gallon pails, okay? So that we can protect you from product going bad. Does that make sense? The activator, once you activate the discharge, you have 8 to 12 hours to use it, but some people will put it in the refrigerator, not next to your lunch. Please do not put it next to your lunch, okay? And it will extend that for another 8 to 12 hours, so about 24 hours. I do have also customers that will extend it longer because they don't care about what the color looks like, and they'll reactivate it with half the amount of activator that they used the first time, okay? I kind of did that with the discharge underbase that we used yesterday because I had used that the day before. So I just added half the activator, and I think that's why I was acting pretty aggressive over there, or you know, taking a little bit longer to activate, if that makes sense. I didn't get to see really what was going on over there, but whatever's going on there could have been because I was doing that. That's why I say we don't guarantee that it's going to work, you know, but just giving you some ideas of how to extend it because it's money, and I get it. You know, you don't want to be throwing stuff away. All right, but the good news is discharge is not expensive. It's very economical compared to all the other ink systems that are out there. That's probably the lowest cost ink in the market, okay? So don't feel bad if you do have to throw some away. And make sure you dispose of it correctly too. Don't just put it down your drain, okay? Did that answer your question? Good. Any other questions? All right, we got about, yeah, we're doing pretty good. I know you guys don't look hungry yet, so we're good. Good question. I like it. Color mixing, you guys want to make colors, right? You guys all know how to make colors. You don't need formulas, right? You guys can do it all by eye, no problem, right? Matsui does have a mixing software that is actually getting upgraded right now. It's going to look, I don't know, Monarch, did you go over your color software? No. So Monarch, Matsui, all the ink manufacturers, we did talk about how we make color, but not how we mix color. We all have softwares or formulas. I do have an Excel spreadsheet that I can share with all of you, but you have to email me, or I'll send it to Zach, and we do have a Google Drive as well. I like Excel because you can adjust the formulas and then save formulas right next to it, but we will be having a software where you can just punch in the Panto number and you're going to be able to choose whether you're doing discharge. Haven't decided yet how we're going to do the other ones, but we're going to do either the series, because remember yesterday we talked about having to have a formula for going direct to fabric and a formula for going over a white underbase. My job is try to make it as simple as possible for all of you to understand which formula you need to use, okay? Because we have so many different options of bases here. So the way we do it now is we have discharge, we have RC, and we have OW. RC is ready color going direct to fabric, okay? OW is over white. So if you see those, that's what they stand for. And we'll try to make it clear on the software as well, and you know, make sure everybody understands it. And then discharge is discharge. So we do have formulas for you to get to color, but there might be some adjustments needed, you know, because of all different variables, different equipment, different environments. Okay? Does that answer your question? Cool. All right. This shouldn't take too long. One thing I think I did talk about it. This one's a fun one. This is a fairly new product. How many of you print on nylon jackets that have waterproof coatings on them? Okay, so Matsui just released a product that's water-based that uses a catalyst just like everybody else, but this is a water-based product that will print over a nylon or waterproof fabric. How many of you guys heard of North Face? We do a lot of stuff with North Face right now using this product. They use this as an underbase because a lot of their products are waterproof. So they use this as an underbase and then print water base on top, okay? So that's what these are here. I also found that this product works on other substrates other than garments. During COVID, I had a guy call me that worked in the medical field. He needed to print some floor mats, but they had to be PVC free because it was going into a medical environment, which doesn't make sense to me because there's a lot of PVC in there, in the medical environment. And I think the blood bags are made out of PVC. But he had to use a PVC ink, PVC-free ink. And it was kind of a plasticky material like this. I said, well, I got this product. I sent him a sample. It worked, and he was amazed of how well it worked because people are stepping on it, you know? And he ended up ordering like 3 to 5 gallon pails at a time for 3 months straight, you know, to get all these mats printed. Somebody told me the other day they printed it on a Frisbee, okay, which is plastic, you know. So just kind of throwing some ideas out there of how this product might work for you. We haven't tested it on too many substrates, but the point I'm trying to get across is that this is a pretty aggressive, it bites really well into different substrates. So if you have something that you want to test it with, this would be something outside of regular garments that you need it to be softer or PVC free. This could be a really good solution. Umbrellas, you know, that's another one. People use it for printing umbrellas, okay? So anything that has a coating that you're concerned with, or plastisol might be too thick or not what people are looking for, this might be another option, okay? Today we're gonna print some shimmer. So we have gold, we have silver, and the beauty of these two products is that they can be tinted with our pigment. So you have a wider range of metallic or shimmer colors that you can offer, and it's very easy to tint. So if you want to use Pantone colors, we do have a product called Pearl Binder or Pearl Base, which is a little bit more subtle metallic. And normally what I tell people is blend them 50-50. That'll tone down the metallic or the shimmer so that you can get closer to that Pantone color, okay? So that's another option, using the formulas for Pantone to make metallic colors. But if you just want to use our pigments, you can add anywhere between 3 to 7% of that color pigment into there. I would recommend keeping the red shades to the gold and the blue and green shades to the silver, and make some really good colors with that, okay? So you have that option of offering multicolor shimmer. We sell crack, right? So this is a color. So we have a crack base and a crack white, which we call crack HO for high opacity. Not what you're thinking, no. The white is what works the best because it's high viscosity, so it's gonna dehydrate quicker and it's gonna create that crack effect quicker on its own. But you do have to flash it before you put it in the dryer to dehydrate it. So the crack effect has to happen before it goes into the dryer. So you have to add a flash at the end. And you do have to have really good deposit for it to also crack. If it's too thin, the cracks are gonna be so small you can't even see them. So it has to be a really, really good deposit. So you might have to do a print flash print with a thick stencil, 50 to 100 microns. Okay, so you wanna build up that stencil really nice and thick. And that's how it works best. For color, I would recommend using our base, but adding a little bit of the white and then just adding more pigment so that it has that crack effect similar to the white, okay? So I'll put these, I'm not gonna pass it around just so we can go through this and get ready for lunch here, but I'll put them back on the table. I think some of you have already seen some of these samples. The foil adhesive, we will again print some of this and then we'll have them over here by the machine. But we also sell a foil blocker. This actually works with plastisol as well. You can print this on top of plastisol because all it's doing, it's protecting that top layer so that the foil doesn't stick to it. Okay, so it's foil blocker. This is a printable foil blocker. This is not something you mix into the ink. You print it on top of whatever colors you don't want the foil to stick to. So we do offer a foil blocker.
Just so you guys know, starting, if Rob can get it done, starting end of next week, I believe we have like 48 or 60 stock color foils that'll be in stock at all times. And then there's, I don't know, maybe like 70 like specialty ones like oil slick and that kind of stuff where you'll be able to purchase as well, but it'll be like a 1 week lead time. So that'll all be online by the end of next week. We'll post it on Instagram. Okay.
Did you get one of their catalogs with all the 200?
Yeah, so I got all the catalogs. There's ones that you could buy that are actual, like this, the actual samples themselves. They could apply a checkout, and then they have, I think, some digital ones or printed ones as well, and those will just go free with the order.
Yeah. How many of you guys are familiar with Crown foil? Anybody used foil before from a company called Crown in the U.S.? Okay. So there is a company in the U.S. that makes these foils called Crown, but when they developed their foil, it was on plastisol or for plastisol. There's a company called A-Magic that RB Digital carries. Most of the foil that comes from Asia is designed for water base. So there is a difference, okay? Now, they're compatible with both inks systems, but they will work better with one system versus the other.
And on top of that, A-Magic specifically recommended 2 products that they know will work with the foil. One of them was the Matsui foil adhesive, and then we have a Wilflex one as well, Avient, and it's called the Wilflex foil adhesive as well. So both of those will be available online.
Okay, moving on here.
On the foil blocker, how does that foil blocker actually affect the print, the plastisol itself?
It won't. Yeah.
There's no.
Yeah, it'll wash off. When they wash it, it'll wash right off. It's just kind of like a wax that gets printed on top. You won't even notice it. You won't even see it. It's just to protect that first layer, separate the resin from the plastisol and the foil. It's just getting in the middle so the foil doesn't stick to it. Yeah, you won't notice it at all. Yesterday we talked about heat activated pigments. So this one here, I'm not that hot, but what I like to do is I just kind of rub it to create some heat. So the color disappears with heat. Okay, so when you're wearing that, the colors will start kind of disappearing from the body temperature. You can also print over regular water-based colors. So when it gets hot, or when you're wearing it, okay, you can see the color underneath up here. You guys see that? So it's another option of how to use these. And sometimes you could just mix them together, use the heat activated pigment and the regular pigment in the same mix, and it'll naturally do that. Okay, so it's not like a 2-color system. This could be a 1-color. So I brought some water. So we talked about the sweat activated ink or the moisture activated ink. You guys see that? No? I'll pass it around. They did such a good job that they put this on backwards because they couldn't see it. So we'll go ahead and pass this one around. So there's that green fabric. If you notice, that green fabric changes color with moisture. And then we have this fabric here. That one you can see better. So it only works with the fabrics that change color with moisture. So I'll go ahead and pass that one around. We have puff. We're going to attempt to do some puff today. Okay, no guarantees. We're going to attempt. But we have some puff. Our puff additive will work as a suede additive as well because you can use it in different percentages. So the lower the percentage, the more it'll act like a suede. The higher the percentage, it will blow up and puff up. Okay? So that's how you work that. And we use normally our high solid acrylics with the puff because we need that stretch, we need that flexibility. With the flock, discharge. Flock, yeah. So there is a technique called flock It could be applied manually, or there's flock sheets. Do you sell flock sheets by any chance?
So one of the things I'm doing in FESPA, meeting with the company that sells all the flock stuff, the high-end systems, the manual ones. So in like a month and a half, I'll have that available as well.
Yeah, but
all the
there's
specialty effect stuff is really coming back now, like foils and flocking.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of goes in waves. And the last maybe 2 or 3 years, it was a little bit, drier. But now, it's like the #1 request I get. Everyone's trying to figure out ways to differentiate themselves from every other printer in the city. And in the States, there's some guys that literally only print special effects because you can charge an extra, $2 or $3 a print, and it doesn't cost you even a fraction of that. So it's a cool way for you guys to stand out from your competition.
And I have a contact we used to sell flock sheets that you would use with our foil adhesive. So you would just transfer it into our foil adhesive, and that would stay on there and give you that flock texture. I'll give you a contact for flock sheets. That's really good. Dye migration blocker. Okay, this is a polyester here. On the left, your right is without the blocker. So the white turned gray, dye migrated, and then on the other side is white on top of the blocker, and you can see the difference. Okay? So dye migration blockers for water-based, they work very, very well. And they're also very good because you can work with low temperatures to avoid activating that dye migration. This is the dual tone, so it's kind of hard to see here from the back, but if you move it side to side, as dual color. There's a technique to printing this as well. You want to print this over a black underbase for it to work better. So you want to have a black underbase. Anything that's pearl, shimmers, reflective, it works better with a black background. Okay. On the shimmers, if you print the shimmer direct to fabric, they're going to sparkle really nice. If you print it over an underbase, it's going to smooth it out.